Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Let's begin today's session of comprehensive news analysis. And the first article that we have for you today is written by a Supreme Court advocate, that is Mr. Dushyant Dave, and he is targeting the former Chief Justice of India, Shri Ranjan Gogoi, who is a Rajya Sabha member right now, about the recent remarks that he made in a televised interview. The author here says that in a recent interview in December 2021, when the former Chief Justice of India, Shri Ranjan Gogoi, was asked whether or not there is corruption in the highest judiciary as well, Ranjan Gogoi said that corruption is as old as the Indian society. And since it is a part of all sectors of the society and every sphere of life, the judiciary also is not above it. In other words, he said that judges don't fall from heavens and there can be corruption found within the judiciary as well, even at the highest level. The author here says that these are extremely serious remarks and should not be ignored. Multiple people before Sri Ranjan Gogoi had made similar remarks about there being corruption in the highest order of the judiciary. Most of them had to face contempt of court proceedings in the Supreme Court, including the famous case of Prashant Bhushan, including the case of Mr. Kajju, both of whom had criticized the judiciary for not being transparent, and both of them had to face the contempt of court query. Now, would the same be done with Sri Ranjan Gogoi or not? That is what the author is saying. The author here has pointed out that even during the tenure of Ranjan Gogoi, when he was the Chief Justice of India, there were some objectionable decisions being taken in the Supreme Court. The author says that during the tenure of Ranjan Gogoi, as many as 8 cases of a specific business group were all given to one single Supreme Court judge, who was Justice Arun Mishra. Now, although the article does not take the name of which business corporation he is talking about, the article keeps on mentioning that there is a business group whose cases were heard by a single judge every single time. Let me tell you the group that he is talking about. The author here is talking about the Adani group actually. Whenever there were cases against the Adani group, they were given to one single Supreme Court judge, that is Arun Mishra. In fact, there were other allegations against the judge Arun Mishra as well. For example, his younger brother was recently named as a High Court judge, and there were doubts about that also, because Arun Mishra at that time was the 4th senior most judge of the Supreme Court, so he was a part of the collegium, and with his younger brother becoming a High Court judge, there were allegations of nepotism. Not just this, there is an understanding that when a High Court judge is appointed, although it is not written in the law, but usually 45 years is seen as the minimum age for appointing a High Court judge. This is a common understanding amongst the collegium. But the brother of Arun Mishra, when he was appointed, he was not even 44 years old at that time, but still he was appointed. So this is not the first time that there are allegations against Justice Arun Mishra by the same person who is a Supreme Court advocate, that is Shri Dushyant Dave. So rather than going into details of those nepotism charges, let's come back to what the article is talking about. As I said, the article says that multiple people before Shri Ranjan Gogoi, for example Prashant Bhushan, were held guilty of contempt of court in 2020 when he said that there is no transparency in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court had said at that time that we expect better behavior from Prashant Bhushan since he is a respected Supreme Court lawyer and he is expected to know the judicial system much better. In fact, Justice Gogoi, when he was the Chief Justice of India, was the head of a Supreme Court bench that initiated contempt of court inquiry against Justice Markandeya Kajju also for similar statements. But when such a statement is now given by retired Supreme Court Chief Justice, no one is saying anything against him, including the Supreme Court of India. The author is saying, why are we now having different standards for the former Chief Justice? Then he goes on to raise questions which I discussed earlier. During his tenure, there were 8 cases of a particular business group, which I disclosed, which one is it, were assigned to a specific judge called Justice Arun Mishra. And all of them were decided in the favor of that business group, which was extremely odd. In fact, most of these cases were against government entities, and even then, all these government entities did not even appeal against the decision that was given against them. The author is saying maybe the state authorities were forced not to appeal against those decisions and accept the laws that they were given in the Supreme Court of India. This again raises questions about number 1, the conduct of Justice Arun Mishra, and second, the tenure of Justice Ranjan Gogoi as the Chief Justice of India. Add to that the fact that in December 2021, the former Chief Justice of India, Shri Ranjan Gogoi, had invited the same industrialist and his family as guests in a book launch event, which was again for the entire world to see. And this goes against the transparency of the Supreme Court. The manner in which these cases were heard, especially since these cases were even heard when the Supreme Court was on vacation. Usually, Supreme Court only hears cases during vacation when they are very urgent in nature, but none of those cases were actually urgent. This is against the ongoing tradition and harms the prestige of the Supreme Court of India. What is stopping the Supreme Court from initiating the contempt of court inquiry against the former Chief Justice of India? No one knows, and this is what the question is, and this is the question being raised by the author in this article. Now, as I said earlier, for your examination point of view, it is not relevant to study about which 8 cases were these, or the character of Justice Arun Mishra, or the allegations of nepotism. For us, it is more relevant to study about the contempt of court proceedings, how do they take place, and how are they relevant to our examination right now. Now, contempt of court, as you know, is a concept which tries to protect the judiciary from attacks from outside. For example, if I go online, I make allegations that I know that Justice XYZ has taken some money from a company and that is why he is not giving decisions against them. If I don't have any proof of those allegations and I'm just making those statements online in the public media, that means I am in contempt of court, meaning that I am attacking the court, criticizing the court without having any evidence for that, because I am lowering the authority of the court. This is called contempt of court. The courts can punish anyone who is held in contempt of the court so that they can work independently. The Supreme Court can start such proceedings on its own motion, so there can be suo motu action taken in these cases without anyone having to go to the Supreme Court. In fact, the contempt of court is taken so seriously that it is one of the restrictions on your freedom of speech and expression. So you can't say that just because I have my freedom of speech and expression, I can say anything. No, there is a restriction on that as well. Separately, there is an article number 129 of the Constitution that confers on the Supreme Court the power to punish for its own contempt. The High Courts also have similar powers under Article 215. There is also a law passed in 1971 called the Contempt of Courts Act 1971, which gives a statutory backing to this idea of contempt of court. Now, usually, whenever the Supreme Court or the High Court have to initiate a contempt of court inquiry, the usual practice is that they will ask the Attorney General of India. Only after Attorney General of India says yes, that contempt of court inquiry should be initiated against a specific person, only then that inquiry is initiated. This is a convention. It's not a concrete law, but this is a convention. But the law says that this prior permission of Attorney General is not mandatory. For example, in Prashant Bhushan case, the Attorney General of India requested the Supreme Court not to go ahead with these proceedings, but still the court did go ahead with that. The Contempt of Court Act of 1971 does not limit the power of the court and they can take up action suo motu. Now, there are usually 2 types of contempts: civil contempt or criminal contempt. Civil contempt means when someone disobeys the order of the court. For example, there is a case in the Supreme Court of a landlord versus tenant, and the Supreme Court asks the tenant that you have to vacate your house after 1 week, and the tenant still does not vacate the house. They are disobeying the order of the court willfully. Then that is called as civil contempt of the court, meaning that you are not following the order of the court that is given to you. The other kind of contempt is criminal contempt. That means when you are trying to lower the prestige of the court by making allegations, by trying to start a scandal, like when you put allegations that the judges are corrupt and they have taken money and I know they are into nepotism, etc. That is called criminal contempt. Now, interestingly, in the year 2006, an important change was made in the law. That change was that now if you are making any statement against the court or the judges, you can defend yourself by proving that whatever you are saying was actually the truth and you have evidence of that. So truth right now is a valid defense if you have to prove that no, you are not saying anything against the prestige of the court. And you also have to prove that disclosing this information was in the public interest and you did that for the betterment of the society. So if you can prove that your allegations are true, then you might not have to face the contempt of court charges. This was a change made in the year 2006. The next article that we have talks about the India Central Asia relations. This is again a topic which we have talked about multiple times in the past couple of weeks or so. On Thursday, the Prime Minister of India hosted an virtual summit of India Central Asia leaders in which the two sides discussed about the ongoing situation in Afghanistan, about how to improve the connectivity between the two regions, and overall how to better our bilateral relationship. Now, in this summit, India and Central Asian regions agreed that we have a history that goes back to many centuries. We have civilizational, cultural, people to people linkages, etc. Many of the rulers that ruled over India had linkages from Central Asia, including the Mughal Empire. However, despite all that, and despite the fact that we are not very far from the Central Asian region geographically, the trade between the two sides is extremely low. Our trade with Central Asian region is right now only $2 billion, and even in that $2 billion, most of the money actually goes to Kazakhstan towards its energy export. If you compare that with China, China's trade figures for that region have exceeded $41 billion and are expected to double by 2030. In this, we are not even counting the investment that China is making in the Belt and Road Initiative. So, if you compare the growing closeness of this region with China as compared to India, India is lagging far behind, and that is why we need to play a catch up. Now, the problem that we have with this region is that although this region has a lot of energy resources and we would like to import that, but there is no proper connectivity between the two sides. Most of these nations in Central Asia are landlocked nations, and India's connectivity to this region is not direct. The option that we have is we can take the route of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and then we can enter Central Asian region. But here Pakistan would not allow easy movement. The second option that we have is go to the Chabahar port in Iran and then enter Afghanistan and then enter the Central Asian region. But again, the problem is that the Chabahar port has been lagging behind and the development of Chabahar port is going at a very slow pace. India also has not fulfilled the promises of investment in Chabahar port because we are threatened by the US sanctions on Iran. The third option that we have is to use a Russia-Iran international north-south transport corridor. I had shown you the photo of this corridor earlier, but let me share again. This is a corridor that we are talking about. The current route of connectivity between India and Central Asia or Russia is the blue line. The alternative is to connect India with Central Asia and Russia through this red route, which is called the North-South Transport Corridor. But again, the problem is that the work on this corridor is going on at a very, very slow pace, and it again involves Iran. But the good part is that it involves a Bandar Abbas port of Iran, which has already been made, and we don't have to make anything new. But again, because of lack of progress on this project also, India's connectivity with the Central Asian region is not up to the mark. In that virtual summit, apart from discussing how can we improve our connectivity, the two sides also agreed that we have a common interest in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a neighbor of Central Asian countries as well as India, and both the sides have their best interest in maintaining peace in the Afghan region. Both the sides agreed that we need to improve our engagement in Afghanistan. We need to set up joint working groups on Afghanistan and Chabahar and provide more opportunities of cultural and educational nature to Central Asian region and Afghanistan as a single country. We also have to understand that if we have to make a mark in this region, we cannot ignore the two big players. Russia, which is the biggest strategic partner, because almost all these Central Asian nations were a part of USSR and they still have a very deep linkage with Russia. Secondly, China, because of its large investment in this area, is their biggest development partner. So we can't ignore the role of China that is being unfolded in this region as of now. Now, if you look at India's relation with Central Asian nations, you will realize the fact that at least pre-2014, we hardly talked about these nations. There were hardly any ministerial level visits from one nation to the other. And despite these nations not being very far from India, they were not really a part of the common discourse. But this has changed since 2014, since the BJP government has come in, because they have been focusing a lot on India's foreign policy and how to forge better relationship with as many nations as possible. Now, if you look at our history, India was one of the first nations to establish democratic relationship with the Central Asian region. As I said, most of these countries were actually a part of the USSR and they came out of USSR after the disintegration. But despite forming diplomatic relationship with them, there were hardly any relationship with these countries in the 1990s. Situation started to improve in the year 2000s and India's economy also opened up, and we also realized the fact that our energy needs can be fulfilled from this region, including our energy need in the field of nuclear. An interesting fact about the region is that Kazakhstan is actually the largest producer of uranium in the world. In fact, Uzbekistan also has quite a large number of uranium reserves. But the problem is about how to transport those reserves from Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan into India. And that is what we have been trying to figure for a long time now. Not just in terms of energy supply, these nations also have a very strategic importance for India, because if you look at the geography of this region, these nations are actually China's neighbor. And as per the famous Mandal theory given by Chanakya, your neighbor is your natural enemy and your neighbor's neighbor is always your friend. So maintaining good relationship with these nations will always come in handy for us. Just look at how China is using Pakistan. Same is a policy that India can use with respect to at least the Central Asian nations, although it won't be that easy. As we discussed earlier, there are multiple ways in which India is trying to connect to Central Asian nations, including the North-South Transport Corridor, started by India, Iran, and Russia in the year 2000 to develop a new trade route. But this 7,200 kilometer multimodal project has not become operational in a way that we had hoped for. Other countries have also come on board, including Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, Central Asia. But again, the plan is much more on paper as compared to what has been implemented so far. The Chabahar Port Initiative, again, as I said, since 2003, there has been a lot of optimism about this project, specifically in India, thinking that it would give India a strategic edge and our connectivity to Afghanistan will increase and we won't have to depend upon Pakistan. But again, India has not been able to fulfill its commitment of financial help to the port, and with USA imposing sanctions on Iran, this project is not going at a pace that we had expected it to go earlier. There was also the idea of the Tapi pipeline, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. But again, any project that has both India and Pakistan will not really go ahead in a smooth manner, as we have seen in many other initiatives, including SARC, etc. And that is why Tapi pipeline also has been stalled since 2006 because of lack of support from Pakistan. The other factors apart from connectivity that are hindering the ties with Central Asian region are the Chinese presence in the region. As we had discussed, China's trade with this region is almost 20 times as compared to India. So obviously these nations are expected to be more in favor of China as compared to India. Then the rise of Taliban in Afghanistan also has distracted our attention from this region, and now we have to ensure that our security interests are also taken care of before we focus on forging international relations with these Central Asian nations. As I showed you earlier, these are the two connectivity options that India was hoping would come good for us: the North-South Transport Corridor, and this was the Chabahar Port. We were hoping that we would be able to bypass Pakistan, reach the Chabahar Port, and then maybe reach Turkmenistan or enter Afghanistan, through which the Central Asian region will be much more open to us. However, none of these two projects have worked the way that we had wanted them to. Next is a news story that you might have heard earlier as well, because it was in the news for a very long time. In fact, since March 2021, there were ongoing negotiations between India and Philippines about Philippines trying to buy the Brahmos missiles from India. Now, finally, a deal has been signed officially between Philippines and the Brahmos Aerospace Private Limited, under which the company will supply shore-based anti-ship variant of the Brahmos missile to Philippines. The deal is about $375 million. And again, this is not a new development because negotiations were ongoing for about an year or so. But the reason why this is significant is that it is the most significant export deal that India has signed in terms of weapon exports for a very, very long time. Of late, India has been trying to encourage the weapon export industry in India so that we can earn more foreign exchange and our dependence on external weapons decreases. And this is an extremely positive step in this regard. Now, we have discussed about the specification of the Brahmos missile time and time again. So I will not go into detail of that because I'm sure many of you are aware of it. I would rather discuss what exactly is India's plan on how do we want to increase our weapon export throughout the world. Now, a couple of years back, the government of India announced that we are making a target of reaching an export of 35,000 crore rupees or $5 billion in defense goods and services by 2025. The Defense Ministry also said that there are some companies which will be involved in this export program, but we will not name those companies because this is for strategic reasons. As per a recently released report of Swedish think tank, that is Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, there are 3 Indian companies among the top 100 defense companies in 2020 rankings. These 3 were the HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, the Ordnance Factory Board, and the Bharat Electronics Limited. These are the ones that are making most of the weapons and equipment that India actually is exporting to nations mainly in Asia. The same report also said that if you look at India's arm import, that has also reduced over the past few years, which is again a positive sign. Now, you have to understand the fact that the items that we export to other nations are much cheaper as compared to the weapons that are sold by US, France, Israel, etc., which makes these systems much more attractive for developing nations which can't afford top of the line weapons. India has supplied multiple missile systems, light combat aircrafts, multi-purpose light transport aircraft, warships, patrol vessels, etc. India also wants to export artillery gun system, tanks, radars, etc. Now, our major customers when it comes to weapon exports are actually the South Asian countries. Vietnam has been at the top of the list. In fact, Vietnam is procuring 12 fast attack aircrafts from India. And interestingly, since they did not have the money, what India did was we offered them a credit line. So, for instance, we gave them a kind of a loan of $100 million. They will use this loan to buy our aircrafts and then they will return the money in installments. Similar to how China operates when it wants to invest in infrastructure projects in African nations. Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has also been pitching its helicopters, the Tejas light combat aircraft, to other Southeast Asian nations where India sees a promising market. Now, this order of Brahmos with Philippines is a major success in this regard. Malaysia also is in line to buy light combat aircraft from India. That is one of the reasons why you would see that every month or every 15-20 days, the DRDO keeps on conducting tests of missiles or new weapons that we have made so that to highlight to the world that our weapons are top of the line and you can buy them for your own safety. There have been multiple steps taken by the government recently to increase our defense export, including relaxation of licensing for those companies who want to make such weapons. Lines of credits have been offered, as you have seen in the case of Vietnam. Government has changed its policies recently, ensuring that the environment to do business for these companies becomes much better. The government has also recently released indigenization list, meaning that there was a list of about over 200 equipments that the Defense Ministry released, saying that these equipments from now onwards will not be imported from outside and they will be manufactured in India only, thus giving a boost to defense manufacturing in India. The budgetary allocation also has been increased, and in that allocation, a specific sum has been put aside specifically for buying weapons that are made in India. Thus, these have given positive results. Now, although you might think that this is a positive step, but please understand that we are still nowhere close to this target of 35,000 crore rupees. As per the recent numbers, our export has reached about 8,700 crore rupees. So we are still about only 25% of the target that we had kept for 2025. So we need to go ahead and expand our export activities significantly. There are some issues that we have to look into. For example, there is a lot of reliance on the public sector. As you can see, the 3 companies which have been named by CIPRI in the top 100 defense export companies, all of them are public sector based. So still private sector is not participating at a pace that it should. Compare that with companies in France, US, Israel, where most of the top of the line weapons are actually made by private companies. Then there are policy delays and there's lack of critical technology. See, defense is one of those fields where new technology comes in every 6 or 7 months and you have to keep updating yourself. For example, the time when the Navy and Air Force placed their order for a light combat aircraft, and by the time that they were finally prepared by HAL, those aircrafts had already become outdated for our Navy. And that is why they were not very happy with it. Because the technology keeps on changing and you have to keep yourself updated with what is the relevant technology in the market. There are multiple jurisdictions. For example, the companies that are making these weapons, they are given direction by the Ministry of Defense also. They are given direction by Ministry of Industrial Promotion also. So they don't know who to answer and who to listen to. Lack of quality again remains an issue in this sector which we must focus on. Next, we have a news about the bad bank, also known as the National Asset Reconstruction Company or the NARCL. As you know, the bad bank was launched as per the budget 2021 to help with the existing NPA accounts in the public sector banks. And now the banks have decided to transfer at least 15 NPA accounts worth 50,000 crore rupees to the National Asset Reconstruction Company or the bad bank that will help in recovering most of the money as much as possible. A total of 38 accounts will be transferred, which are worth close to 83,000 crore rupees in a phased manner. In the first phase, only 15 accounts will be transferred. Now, as you know, bad bank structure mainly has two organizations. One, NARCL, that is the National Asset Reconstruction Company, and the second is IDRCL, that is the Indian Debt Resolution Company Limited. Both of these work together to resolve the bad debt issue. This step is being taken to try and resolve the problem of existing NPAs and to recover as much money from the dead accounts as possible. Now let me explain to you how does it actually work and what would the bad bank actually do. Let's assume that the bank gave a loan of about 100 crore rupees to Mr. Maल्या. And now Vijay Maल्या obviously is not coming back. He has gone to London. The bank is not able to take the money back from him. With interest, this money has now, for example, become 150 crore rupees. Now, banks specialize in giving loans, but banks don't really specialize in extracting money forcefully. So, what the banks will do is they will ask the NARCL or the bad bank for help. What the bad bank will do is they will give 15% of this money in cash to the banks, that you take this 15% money and you start your working. The remaining 85% we are giving you as a government security, and we will see in how much time we can extract as much money as possible. When we extract the remaining money, we'll give you the money after that. That is in short the work of the bad bank. Let me tell this to you in more detail now. So the bad bank is more of an asset reconstruction company. The asset that the bank had, the loan that they had given, now they are not being able to take it back. They will take help of some other company, which is called the asset reconstruction company. They will try to extract the money from those people. So in short, they take over the bad loans of the commercial banks and they try to recover the money over a period of time. The bad bank is not really a bank, so they don't really give loans or take deposit. Their only and only job is to help the commercial banks in extracting the bad loans that they had already given. As we know, public sector banks in India are facing issue of huge NPAs, that is non-performing asset, and that is why the banks are running into huge losses. Because of which the government in 2021 budget introduced the concept of bad bank. Now, as per the structure of the bad bank, there will be two organizations working. First, NARCL, that is National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited. They will acquire the NPAs from the bank of a total of 2 lakh crore rupees in different phases. The public sector banks together will own 51% of this company. Now, after this company has taken over the bad loans of the bank, then the second company, that is Indian Debt Resolution Company Limited, will come in. They will try and sell this stressed asset in the market. For example, when Vijay Maल्या took a loan of 100 crore rupees and he did not pay it back, while taking the loan, he would have given some of his bungalows and cars as a security. That is kind of an asset that he would have given to the bank against this loan. Now it is a responsibility of Indian Debt Resolution Company to sell this asset in the market and see how much money can they make out of it so that the banks can have their money back. This is how these two companies will function, the NARCL and the IDRCL. One will take over the bad loan and the second will try to sell the stressed asset at the maximum value possible. As I said earlier, while taking over the bad loan, the asset reconstruction company will pay 15% of the agreed price in cash. So, for example, Vijay Mallya's outstanding amount is 140 crore, 100 crore loan, 40 crore interest. Now, NARCL will take over this loan, but they will take it at a discounted price. Let's say 80 crores or 70 crores. So, whatever is the agreed price, 15% will be paid to the bank in cash. Remaining 85% will be in the form of security receipt. Security receipt means if this bad bank is able to extract the remaining money from Vijay Mallya, then they will give it back to the bank. But if they are not able to extract money from Vijay Mallya, then the government will take guarantee in between and the government will give the money to the banks. So as you can see, if the bad bank is unable to sell the bad loan or cannot recover the money, then the government guarantee will be invoked. For this, the government in the budget had earmarked 30,600 crore rupees. So if the bad bank is not able to extract the money by selling the assets, or they are not able to extract the money from Vijay Mallya, then the government will come in between and the government will pay the remaining 85% amount to the original bank. This is the entire scheme. The problem, however, in this entire scheme is that when the government says that, okay, we are the one coming in between, we will pay the bank if the asset reconstruction company can't take out the money, from where exactly the government is paying? Government is paying from your and my pocket, right? We are paying taxes to the government. Indirectly, it is our tax money that is being given to the bank because Mr. Vijay Mallya could not return the money, right? So in short, this entire circle comes down to the fact that it is the government through people's money that will compensate to the bank in case we cannot extract money from selling the assets of Vijay Mallya, etc. So this is a scheme to reduce the NPAs of the bank, to transfer the bad loan to a bad bank whose responsibility will be to extract the money to sell the assets, etc. If they can, good. If they can't, then the government will come in between and they will bail out the bank by giving the 85% of the remaining agreed value. Simple. The next article that we have again discusses the problem of electoral bonds in India and how they go against the concept of transparency in the Indian democracy. Similar kind of articles have been written in the Hindu newspaper multiple times and we have discussed them also in the past. Now, the reason why it is written again is in December 2021, the government again allowed the State Bank of India to issue new electoral bonds and to encash them since we have state elections in 5 states coming very soon. The author here makes a point that asking the people to go and vote in the election without even knowing the source of donation to their political parties goes against the tenets of democracy. In a democracy, ensuring that citizens have information on political funding is the most essential feature. And if you can't even tell the people how are their political parties getting funded, how can you expect the people to vote in a certain manner? For example, if I am voting for a party A or B or C, I need to know from where are they getting their money. If they are getting money from an organization which I know is corrupt, which I know is not doing good work, then obviously I would not want to vote for that political party. But right now, with the introduction of electoral bonds, there is no way for the general public to know the sources of donation. Now, the problem is that this question has been asked in the Supreme Court since 2018, and the court has not taken any concrete step in order to regulate this. In fact, Supreme Court, on the other hand, said that the bonds are not completely anonymous. Why? Because you can only purchase it through SBI and they're only encashed through SBI. And when you purchase these bonds, you have to do KYC, you have to submit your Aadhaar and other documents. So it is not that they are completely anonymous, just that the general public does not know about it. And also, if the general public is so interested in knowing this, there is a way in which the general public can come to know. The Supreme Court said that to know the identity of the donor, you can look through the corporation's financial statement which are available with the registrar of companies. So what the Supreme Court is saying is, if I want to know how much money did BJP get from a certain company, I have to first go to registrar of companies, then I will have to request them to show me the accounts of Infosys or TCS or Adani Group or Reliance. Then from that account, I will have to see how much money did they spend on electoral bonds. And then I will have to make an assumption, okay, this is the amount of money they have actually given to political party. So what the Supreme Court is saying this, if you are so keen on knowing who has given money to which political party, then make some effort. Now you also know this is not practical. Any common man, any common sane man would not take so much effort to go to registrar of companies, check out the financial statement of companies just to get to know how much money they have donated to whom. Because even in those records, the name of the political party will not be given. Even in those records, it would only say that they may have purchased an electoral bond of 100 crore or 1000 crore rupees. Thus, it is not practical at all. Similarly, the political parties are not obliged to tell the public how much money they are getting from whom. So, how can we actually get to know who is giving how much money? The Supreme Court obviously has faltered in this assumption that the political parties will make disclosures about their political donations. Thus, the Supreme Court needs to reconsider this matter again and ensure that they give a concrete judgment in this regard. When you ask the political parties about why is it that they don't want the people to know, the political parties say that when we file our return to the Election Commission of India, we give them the detail of all our donations, and the general public does not need to know this. But again, that goes against the concept of democracy, and I'll tell you why. We have the right to information law. Now, right to information says that we can ask for any information from the public authority. The political parties say that we are not public authorities, we are not the government. You can ask your questions to government authorities only. But this is where there is a contradiction. For example, when you talk about appointment of people at NHRC, or when you talk about appointment of people at the Lokpal, the committees that appoint people to these important offices, these committees have members of opposition also. So, for example, Congress might not be in the government right now, but a Congress leader is a part of the committee that suggests who shall be the next Lokpal, or who suggests who shall be the next chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. So Congress may not be in the government, but the Congress does have a role to play in how the government is running right now. So they cannot say that we are not a public authority and we will not disclose any detail. That is why ideally they should all come under the RTI, all the political parties, even if they are not in power. Not just this, many political parties get land at concessional rates from the government to make their offices. They get a lot of different benefits, and thus, because they are getting benefit from the public money, they ought to tell the public from where are they getting their political donations. In fact, on the contrary, any restrictions that were enforced on political donations have now been taken away. For example, earlier the law was that whatever profit a company is making, maximum 7.5% of your profit was the maximum limit that any company could donate to a political party. That limit now has been removed. Now you can donate any amount of money to political party. Similarly, there was earlier a law that a company can only donate money to political party after it is at least 3 years old. Now this has also been taken away. If you form a company today, tomorrow, you might not do any business, but you can start donating to a political party. That means any shell company that has just been made for no purpose at all can donate money to a political party. So all the restrictions that were there earlier, all of them have been removed. And the most interesting part is that when these types of laws are introduced in the parliament, there is not even a single member in the parliament that opposes this. This is one of those laws where BJP, Congress, every single party that you can think of will vote yes, and within 2 minutes all the laws will be passed. So it is all the political parties that are on one side of these issues and the public on the other side. As I said, the government's argument has always been that people don't have a fundamental right to know how the political parties are getting their money, and political parties in the opposition are not a part of the government anyway. Political parties are different and the government is different. The government is also saying that it is actually reducing the role of black money in funding of elections, because for electoral bonds, you have to go to SBI and only through a bank you can buy that. There is no cash transaction. However, the reality is different. Since you have removed all these restrictions, the amount of black money that is coming into politics has not been restricted by this in any way. And because the government is not expected to take the scheme back, our only hope is that maybe in the long run, it is a Supreme Court that takes certain steps to put restrictions on this scheme in some way or the other. Now we have discussed about electoral bonds and how do they work and how can they be bought earlier as well. So now it makes more sense to discuss about the exact numbers in political funding. Whenever you have to know about political funding in India, the one report that you can actually depend on is a report given by an NGO called ADR. ADR stands for Association for Democratic Reforms. They usually bring a report about political funding every single year. They also have reports about criminal records of politicians, etc. Now, their report said that over 55% donations to regional parties in the financial year 2019-2020 were from unknown sources. So over half of the money that they are getting, you will never know the source of that money. Electoral bonds make up 95% of that unknown source for those regional parties. For national parties, it is even higher. For national parties, about 71% of their income comes from unknown sources. Parties from South India are at the top of the list when it comes to income from unknown sources. And amongst the regional parties, the one that comes at the top is the TRS, the Telangana Rashtra Samiti, which got the highest income from unknown sources. At the national level, that is the ruling party, that is the BJP, that has been getting most of the donations for a very long time now. At the regional level, it is the TRS. Now, the report also made certain recommendations of how to improve this situation. This is important for you from the examination point of view. It suggested that any organization getting foreign funding should not be allowed to support or campaign any candidate or party. Secondly, the mode of payment of all donation income, like the membership fee that some political parties charge, etc., should be declared by the parties in their audit report to the IT department and to the Election Commission of India. Thirdly, the Election Commission of India should publicize on the website the details of any action that they are taking against any individual or company or political party for violating the laws on political donations. The parties that are not adhering to the deadline fixed by the Election Commission of India should be penalized, and they should be made to pay taxes on all their incomes from different sources. National and regional parties should provide all the information of their finances under the RTI Act. This is by far the biggest demand that has been made ever since the RTI Act was introduced. But as you can expect, the political parties have never even paid any attention to this and have rejected this point blank. Now, since the matter was in the Supreme Court since 2018, the Supreme Court, although it did not stop the electoral bonds completely, did make a few suggestions. For example, the Supreme Court had said that the scheme protects the identity of the purchaser, but the purchase under the scheme should only take place through banking channels, which is actually the case because you can only go to SBI to purchase these bonds. The Supreme Court in 2019 also said that all political parties should submit details of donations received through bonds to Election Commission of India, and the window for purchasing electoral bonds should be reduced from 10 days to 5 days in total. The Election Commission of India also told the Supreme Court that it is not against electoral bonds, but it is not in support of the anonymous donations. Because again, the problem is electoral bonds do not contain anyone's name. They are bearer bonds. They will just contain the amount. You can hand it over to any political party of your choice who got at least 1% votes in last general elections, and they can encash it. It will not have your identity. These are the articles we wanted to discuss from the Hindu newspaper today. Now, a couple of practice questions. Number 1. India's defense export potential is still largely unrealized. Comment. Second, what is a bad bank? List out the objectives behind setting up a bad bank. Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Thank you so much for watching the video.